Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Uncanny X-Men number 298, cover dated March 1993. So the cover caption here, Acolytes return, and we've got some of the X-Men battling these Acolytes. The Acolytes last seen aboard Asteroid M, blowing up with Magneto at the end of X-Men number 3. Only one Acolyte escaped, the traitor Fabian Cortez, and maybe he's behind what's going on here. So we see also on the cover Jean Grey telekinetically holding this young boy, and he's at the center of what's happening inside this issue. One other point to note, we've got Gambit there with a charged playing card front and center of the cover, and you know it's always got to be the Ace of Spades, yes? So cover here by Brandon Peterson and Al Milgrom. Let's open it up to the splash page. So this is a pretty cool splash page of Professor X, and he is, as it turns out, in his ready room. He's been there for 73 hours, and hence he's grown quite a little stubble beard there. And let's turn the page to a half double page spread, and here we see him in this ready room. And what he's doing is, it's a computer chamber several hundred meters below his Westchester estate. Professor X has access to information gathering sources from across the globe, some obtained legally, others less so. Possessed of the most powerful mutant mind on the planet, his brain can assimilate and process impossibly huge amounts of raw data in an astonishingly short amount of time, all of which places Charles Xavier in the unenviable role of lone witness to what may very well be the first day of the end of the world. So what's going on here across the computer screens? Well, we've got Trish Tilby reporting on a funeral of some description here, and other various items. We've got a skull and crossbones here. We've got some names on this particular file, and what's it all going to amount to? We've got an uneaten dinner here as well for Professor X. So he's interrupted by Bishop, and Bishop has something he wants to say to Professor X, and we'll get to that when we turn the page. The title of this story is For the Children, and the creative team is Scott Lobdell, writer, Brandon Peterson, penciler, Al Milgrom now inking Peterson's pencil. So we've had so far Terry Austin on the Executioner's Song chapters, then Dan Panosian, who did a great job in the previous issue, now Al Milgrom. Chris Eliopoulos, letterer, and Marie Javins, colorist, rounds out the creative team. So what does Bishop want from Professor X? This is a great anchor image here, kind of top down, three-quarter profile of Bishop, and he says, "Well, it shames me to admit this. It is obvious to all parties concerned that admitting me into the X-Men was premature at best. In the future where I was raised, my direct approach was more than acceptable. Indeed, it was absolutely necessary. Clearly, that is not the case in the here and now. Rather than continue as a disruptive influence, I regretfully tender my resignation," he says. But Professor X isn't having any of it. He takes off the Cerebro helmet, and says, "Rubbish. Though it oft times seems the contrary," Professor X says, "attending Xavier's means more than fighting for a world that both fears and hates us. This school is also about learning. That's not going to," he says here, "if you fail, then I fail. That's not going to happen, Bishop. You never struck me as one to give up easily. Therefore, your resignation is not accepted. Do I make myself clear?" Bishop's eyes wide open. "Crystal, sir," he says. "I'll just make a point here about Eliopoulos' lettering choices here. Yeah, I was sent wrong with the speech balloon. I went here instead of down here, even though this is the next piece of speech." So that's a tough one there, because this is a fairly crowded panel with speech, but definitely the positioning of the balloon sent me wrong. So that's a demerit to Chris Eliopoulos there. So Bishop is happy enough, and Professor X has a request though. He wants Aurora to bring the van round out front in 5 minutes. So where does Professor X wish to go? Then we have a scene switch. Some 60 miles up the Hudson River sits another school altogether, and the school here is Our Mother of the Sacred Heart, and we've got a familiar supporting character working there, and it is Sharon Friedlander. formerly of the New Mutants supporting cast, and also the Mir Island saga and Uncanny X-Men. So Sharon here is thinking, yesterday I treated 3 running noses, 2 scraped knees and 1 black eye. A bit pedestrian compared to my responsibilities back when I watched over the New Mutants. But she's happy babysitting one of Xavier's mysterious what? She's punched in the jaw here, knocked out cold by this group here. And one of them says, Cargill, was that necessary? Probably not, but it was fun. For you maybe, but Flatscan here didn't seem to enjoy it. So the boots here are the giveaway. We're dealing with members of the Acolytes. Then we're back to Professor X's and the Danger Room. And we've got a nice full-length anchor image here of Jean Grey in profile. And what's going on here is she's organizing a training session with Bishop and Gambit, and there have been tensions between these two because of what we learned in Uncanny X-Men 287 regarding the X-Trader. Bishop believes that Gambit, whose real name he knows is LeBeau, is the X-Trader, and so there's been this tension between them. Gambit says, look, you know, I amn't, and Jean here says to keep things, the point of the exercise to get these two working together is they got to cross the Danger Room and tag her. But the obstacle is going to be Archangel, and there's going to be hologram simulacra of him, courtesy of the Shi'ar technology that powers the Danger Room. And so they don't know which one is the real Warren or not. So here they begin crossing the room, dodging Warren's feather blades. And yeah, so a bit of banter here between the two. You realize, mon ami, says Gambit to Bishop, this is a thinly veiled attempt at forcing you and me to make nice. Bishop says, are you casting aspersions upon my professionalism, LeBeau? The name is Gambit, he says, and yes, I may not like you any more than I can trust you, says Bishop, but you are nonetheless an X-Man. As such, I will defend you as if you're not the homicidal traitor to the cause that I suspect you are. So the exercise is afoot, and then scene switches to Central Park, New York City, where not too long ago, probably in terms of Marvel time, a few weeks ago, Professor X was shot in the park, remember, by Strife posing as Cable. And so here we see another old supporting character from X Factor, Charlotte Jones, and she is bringing to Professor X an NYC coroner's office report, and Professor X is accompanied by Storm, and Charlotte asks Professor X, how can I be sure that you're not using your mental powers on me? He says, it's a perfectly reasonable question. Honestly, Detective, there is no way for you to truly know. In this matter, I'm afraid you're going to have to trust me. And then all of this is interrupted, just as she's handing over the file, by a sonic call for help, primal, unfocused, a final, fatal act of desperation. And this implies that Sharon was killed by the Acolytes. Meanwhile, back in the Danger Room, the exercise is almost complete. Bishop is about to tag Jean, and then they're all interrupted by a sonic projection of Professor X, shouting in their heads, quickly, my X-Men, you are needed. He says, no time to apologize or to explain. Everyone report to the hangar deck immediately. 65 miles due north. I will elaborate en route. So up the Hudson River to the school. There's not a moment to lose, for innocent human lives have already been lost, and dozens more, I fear, hang in the balance, he says, as they exit the Danger Room. And then we're back at the school, our Mother of the Sacred Heart, and we have the school bus arriving with the children singing aboard. And who turns out to be the bus driver except for Tom Corsi, another supporting cast character from New Mutants, and then of course the Mir Island saga. And he gets a feeling that something's off at the school. Usually Sister Ignazio is out front waiting for the kids. She's not there. It looks more like a morgue. So he backs up slowly, and then the school just blows up. And here in this anchor image, we've got the Acolytes. And so we get their names here. There's some new characters. We've got the Kleinstocks here. These are triplets with some kind of energy-based type power. We have got Uncanny, so I'm going to give her name is Carmela, so I'm going to give her like an Italian pronunciation of her surname there. And we have got Joanna Cargill, and she is somebody that Jean Grey will recognize in Gambit 2. I'll talk about that in a moment. And here's poor Sharon. And in effect, it turns out the next issue, it's confirmed she's dead. So this is rough stuff in this issue. And here we go. We've got this Kleinstock going straight towards the bus, and he is blown away by Tom Corsi, who's got this sidearm on him, and he smashes out through the windscreen of the bus, blasting away. And he's grabbed by Uncanny, but she's got some kind of sonic exoskeleton that she's got control over. That's her mutant power. And she says to Tom, "You've slain a fellow acolyte, and that will cost you your life." And Tom says, fairly wryly, "You couldn't have mentioned that earlier. I would have settled for giving him a flesh wound. As someone about to be crushed by my sonic exoskeleton, you're surprisingly calm." Yes, so why is he so calm? Well, it turns out he's spied the arrival of the Blackbird and the X-Men. So it's mostly the Gold Team, but with the addition of Gambit, of course. So pretty cool image of them emerging from the Blackbird. And Jean says, "We hope the Acolytes disbanded after Magneto's death." Obviously, that wasn't the case, and indeed. So here we go. We've got this one Cargill shouting, "Human lovers, if you were true mutants, you would follow the teachings of Magnus. You would fight at our side to purge the world of the genetically impure." So we've got this reiteration, but with changes of Silver Age Magneto's vision for mutant supremacy. And Jean recognizes this acolyte as Frenzy. So Frenzy was a member of the Alliance of Evil, rather dramatically titled team. That was a team that went up against the original X-Factor that Jean, Cyclops, Archangel were part of. So she has changed allegiances and is now a member of the Acolytes. And then we have the remaining Kleinstocks attacking Archangel. So he's engulfed in a plasma blast. And Jean is worried from here. The narrative captions make that plain. Jean Grey has known Warren Worthington since the day she joined the X-Men. She's less familiar with Archangel, the man he became after Apocalypse's genetic experiment. So not 100% sure of whether Warren can withstand this attack. And it seems not. So Jean goes bananas, and she says to the Acolytes, "Make no mistake, I'm most definitely against you," when one of them offers that she join them. And she says, "The Magneto I knew may have been determined, even brutal, but he would never strike out at innocent children." And that is absolutely correct. And then they have this kind of like religious terminology they use. Blasphemer. Magnus was a great man, one who was not afraid to make difficult decisions, because these two Kleinstocks, they can merge into a Gestalt type figure. So they've grown in size and power. And then he says here, "He died for our crimes, so that mutants will inherit the earth." So this is a weird subversion of Christianity and looking to Magneto as some kind of dead savior, messiah type figure, and his teachings in this issue. And then we've got like Bishop joining the attack, Gambit attacking Cargill. And what's interesting here is these know each other, right? She says to him, "This is what you've learned as an X-Man, Remy, to run away? People changed, Joanna. Never took you as the mindless sheep type." And so he's timing the tire here to crack her in the head from behind. Interesting, because this is a suggestion regarding, or an implication regarding, a facet of Gambit's at this time mysterious past, and what could have been his relationship with Frenzy or Joanna Cargill. Well, we don't learn it, but you know, like, it's something that could be dipped into the future, no doubt. And then what happens is Uncanny grabs the mutant they've come for, the one that Sharon and Tom were watching over on Xavier's commission. And so they pull the mutant child out of the bus, and she's shocked and disgusted. She says, "What is this? Xavier has played us all for fools. This child is obviously flawed, even by human standards. There's no place for imperfection in our new order." So this brand of supremacism is very disturbing, and Warren makes the point as he emerges from the attack that he received, as he recovers from it, and he says, "And this is how you honor the memory of Magneto. His entire family was wiped out by people who felt like you do, supremacists who believed that they had a right to decide who lived and died." And he says, "The child has Down syndrome, with as much right to live in anyone's order as you. Nothing new about ignorance, intolerance, hating what you don't understand." But he's still weakened by the attack on him, and so he's unable to attack her or save the child. And she says, "This child is as useless to Xavier as he is to the Acolytes. He belongs with the rest of this human kindling." And then she addresses the Kleinstock Gestalt, "Purify them." So he's about to blast them into ashes when he's attacked by Bishop. We can see the children crying there. Terrible. And so Kleinstock aims his blast at the bus, and it seems the bus explodes, but Gambit was there just in the nick of time to use his kinetically charged cards to create a firewall in front of the bus, which gives Warren, who's now up and about, time to fly the children out of danger. And Jean's worried about the fire reaching the gas tank of the bus, so they're organizing an evacuation here, and just in the nick of time, coming from Central Park, Storm arrives. And of course she uses her power to douse the flames of the fire, and she says, "What monsters are these that would threaten the lives of children no matter what the cause?" So a pretty cool anchor image of Storm here as she alights, and the Acolytes have escaped, but the children fortunately were saved. And Tom here seems to have survived too. He's being attended to by Jean. Yeah, Gambit says, "Fortunately we saved the children," and Storm asks, "Did we, Gambit, or did we sentence them to a world where no man is safe from his brother?" And Gambit replies, "If we were fighting the fight on our own, definitely, but that ain't the case, Stormy, not by half." And that was his nickname for her when they were together in New Orleans. What would it be in Marvel time? A year ago? She never liked that nickname, but she doesn't say anything there. It's not the right moment. And then our last page. Later that night, we've got Trish Tilby reporting regarding the incident. An estimated 14 school employees in the building when it exploded. Authorities are withholding names until families have been notified. While no one is willing to officially exonerate the X-Men, witnesses confirm they were defending the students of the school from a fanatical band of genetic supremacists known as the Acolytes. And who's on hand to give political comment except for Senator Robert Kelly, chairman of the Committee on Mutant Affairs? And he says, "I wish I could say I'm shocked by what I've seen here today. The truth is, I've spent the past 10 years of my life predicting just such an incident. There are people in the government and the liberal media who, for whatever reason, would like you to believe we have nothing to fear from the mutant populace. I urge the American public to wake up and see the mutant menace for what it is, for no other reason than for the children." So there we are, back to our title of the story. Professor X has been watching, switches off the TV. He's got a lot to ponder. He still hasn't shaved. He looks deeply worried. What is going to be his response to this inflaming incident for anti-mutant prejudice? So this is Lobdell returning to that theme, because we didn't really see much of it during the Lee and Portacio tenure on the X-Books, not since Claremont's time. There was a little bit about it in chapter 1 of Executioner's Song, but Lobdell returning to that theme. Speaking of which, there's an interesting letter here from one Jamie Johnson, no address given, where he complains about Professor X's speech in Uncanny X-Men 294, and he complains specifically about the inclusion of homosexuals with man, woman, black, Hispanic, Jew, Asian, Native American, homosexual, mutant, everyone. So he says, I'm offended for myself and for the millions of other peoples of the different races Xavier mentioned. How can a company which prides itself on paying attention to the finest details of an alien people's warships make a mistake of such obvious and offensive magnitude? The answer is quite simple. Marvel has become politically correct. Well, I wonder what this guy might think about political correctness today versus back in 1993. And you can read the editorial response to his letter here, which I feel is very balanced. I'll just give the conclusion. Xavier was pleading for tolerance and, yes, condemning bigotry in every form. He lives to see the day the world can live without prejudice, without hate, and we tend to think that's a dream, a goal we can all share. Okay? Okay. So also the circulation numbers for the title, pretty healthy stuff here. Average number of copies each issue during preceding 12 months, 863,000. That's a pretty good number. I bet you they'd kill to have those numbers today. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Uncanny X-Men 298. If you did, please like the video. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.